Well, Dana, thanks for having me. Listen, I think there's no doubt that the president's performance at the debate has raised questions for voters, not questions about his character or his decency or who he cares about or who he fights for, but questions as to whether this is still the old Joe Biden. Now, I've worked with Joe Biden. I've been on the phone with him, but I've been in the room with him. This is one of the most effective presidents that I've ever served under. I've watched him repair this nation's reputation all around the world. I worked with him on the 2022 gun bill that would not have happened without his detailed support and intervention. That saved lives all around the country. I also watched the debate. And I think it's pretty amazing that, 90% of the conversation is around Joe Biden's style. When up on that stage, Donald Trump was engaged in a level of pathological lying that we've never seen before in a debate. He endorsed political violence over and over and over again. It's a statement on our politics that we're not talking more about Donald Trump. Now, that being said, voters do have questions. And personally, I love Joe Biden. I don't know that the interview on Friday night did enough to answer those questions. And so I think this week is going to be absolutely critical. I think the president needs to do more. I'm not advising this campaign, but if I were, I would probably suggest that the president get out there and do a town hall, that he do a press conference, that he show the country that he is still the old Joe Biden, one of the best retail politicians that this country has ever seen. The president says he can do that. I trust that he can, and I think this week is going to be really critical for him to answer those remaining questions. And let's just be honest, I think there are still questions out there in the minds of many voters.
So let me just ask you straight this key question. Do you think President Biden should remain on the Democratic Party's ticket as the nominee for president?
I take the president at his word. He has said that he believes that he is up to do this job. I have seen him do this job at an absolutely exceptional level. No president has had this level of legislative accomplishment in their first 4 years as Joe Biden. I think that he's got to go out there this week and show the American public that he is still that Joe Biden, that they have come to know and love. I take him at his word. I believe that he can do it. But I think that this is a really critical week. I do think the clock is ticking.
There wasn't a no and there wasn't a yes there. It sounds like you're in a wait and see mode.
Well, listen, I support Joe Biden, period, stop. But I know that there are a lot of voters out there that need to be convinced that Thursday night's debate performance was a bad night. And ultimately, I'm supporting Joe Biden. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, but the president needs millions of votes. I think the president needs to make some moves this week to put himself out there in a position to answer those questions. And if he can't do that, then, of course, he's going to have to make a decision about what's best for the country and what's best for the party.
Have you spoken to the president since the debate?
I have not.
Okay. You are, of course, as you've just mentioned, a very close ally of the president. Do you want him to be reaching out to more people like you? Would that help? Or is it more important for him to get out and do the things that you just described, town halls, unscripted events, interviews, and the sort?
Well, let's remember that the president still has to run the country. He continues to be the leader of the free world. There's news breaking overnight that we may be closer than ever to a ceasefire agreement in the Middle East, a ceasefire agreement that will have been midwifed by this president and his team. So this president, I think, is best served by continuing to show the American public that he can run the country well, that he can help lead the free world. But to the extent that he does have time to campaign, I think it is more important for him to be out there speaking directly to the public in an impromptu way. Again, this is a president who has been one of the best person-to-person politicians that this country has ever seen. I think the public has a question as to whether that is still Joe Biden today, and he can answer that question this week if he gets out there in a town hall setting, in an unscripted setting, and shows the American people what he said to be true on Friday night, that he still can lead this country in the way that he has for the last 4 years.
I'm told that your colleague, Senate Intelligence Chairman Mark Warner, believes at this point it would be best for President Biden to end his campaign. He's trying to organize some of your colleagues, maybe even you, to go to the White House, maybe to deliver that to deliver that message directly. Have you spoken to Senator Warner? And would you be part of any group of Senate Democrats to go to the White House and have a direct conversation with the president?
Listen, I don't know of that effort. I've spoken to Senator Warner, but I'll let him speak for himself. Listen, I think you are right to note at the outset of this program that there's a lot of anxiety in the country and in the party today. And that's because the stakes are so high. That's because Donald Trump presents an existential threat to democracy. He has advertised he is going to transition this country from a democracy to a dictatorship. He is going to continue the work to take away women's right to reproductive health care choices on their own. He is going to do another massive tax cut for billionaires and corporations, taking money out of the pockets of ordinary average Americans. So, yes, the stakes are very high. Yes, this party wants to make sure that we are in a position to win. Joe Biden has made it clear that he believes that he can be the candidate that will deliver us victory. And this week, I think the president needs to engage in the kind of interaction with voters that will prove to those that are skeptical out there that he can do the job. And if he can't do that, then he's got a decision to make about what the path forward is. He deeply, deeply loves this country, and I know that he wants to do whatever is necessary in order to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't become president and destroy this democracy.
Do you believe, you're a seasoned politician, do you believe that at this point Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump and stop the litany of things that you just listed from happening?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I think the president needs to answer those questions that voters have. If he does that this week, I think he will be in a very good position, and we can get back to what this campaign needs to be, a contrast between Joe Biden, a decent, honorable man of character, and Donald Trump, a pathological liar who has advertised that he wants to endorse and mainstream political violence in this country. But again, if the president is unwilling to do the things necessary to restore voters' confidence or answer voters' questions, then of course he has a decision to make about what the best path forward is for the country. But if he answers those questions this week, there's no doubt that he can win this race.
One of the things that George Stephanopoulos asked the president was whether or not he would undergo a cognitive or neurological test to show the American people that he had a bad night and he doesn't have a physiological decline. He said he didn't want to do that because he said every day leading the free world is effectively a cognitive test. Do you think he should take a medical exam?
Well, I don't really know what the substance of those tests are, whether the measurement would be impactful for voters that have questions. I think it's much more important for the president to be in a conversation with voters this week in an unscripted way to show that he is still the old Joe Biden. I think that would be a much more effective way to answer people's questions than some medical test. The president will decide what the path forward is. But again, I think this can't be a business as usual week. I think that Friday night's interview did not answer all the questions that people in my state have. They want to believe that this is still the old Joe Biden, but they need to see more from the president, and I hope that we see that this week.
Okay, last question. If the president does at the end of maybe this week, you're saying that really is his effective deadline, decides or people decide around him that he is not the best person at this time to be the Democratic nominee, do you think that the party should rally around Vice President Kamala Harris, that she should be at the top of the ticket, or should there be a more robust discussion and debate before or even at the convention?
Yeah, I don't think that's a necessary or helpful conversation right now, but I will say this. Kamala Harris has been an extraordinary vice president. She has been a major part of this administration's domestic and international successes. She's somebody that I know and trust. But right now, I think the focus has to be on the president using this week to do the things necessary in an unscripted way in order to answer the questions that voters have.